book, just to keep in mind that we've gone this way, the way we've gone the other classes as well. On one hand, the benefit, of course, is that people that can't come every week can catch up with something that happened. It gives us a record of what we're doing. Of course, it does mean that we have to be careful with what we say. It's less intimate than we are sometimes, and we can always save some time at the end for that intimacy if people would like to talk about what we've read, what we've learned, and how they're processing it, but want to do that so not on record. That's a possibility. And just send me a note, or send a note to me in the chat if that's what you'd like to do. It's important, really important for us to study. It's really important for us to study in a way that's public, so people know that we're taking our ancient sources seriously, even in the midst of this war, which has a lot to do with covenant and conquest. That's why I gave it the name a few weeks ago before the war even started. But it's also important, really important for us to be able to process this in a personal way. And not everybody is interested in processing it that personal way out loud to the public. So I totally get it. Likewise, you can always write me an email if you'd like to discuss something, as many of you already do. I'm always happy to do that. Usually when we want to wish somebody a happy anniversary, we get to wish both of them at one time. But I only see Sue. Is Sid around today? Need you to unmute.
Cardio rehab. This is, I think, okay. Either this week or next week.
All right. So we wish you and Sid a happy anniversary. Mazel tov to you, in spite of all the challenges there are in time, whether they're cardio or whether they are politico and military, whatever they might be. So welcome and Mazel tov. And I'm guessing that you'll be drinking a l'chaim later on today at some unknown location.
Correct.
The rest of them. Okay. All right, everybody. So Mazel tov, please send on to them as well. Okay. We're in the second chapter of the book of Joshua. Joshua, in many ways, as we saw last week, is a continuation of Deuteronomy and other parts of the Torah. That was my goal last week. The goal this week is more to talk about a lovely, from a literary point of view, short story episode, which comes in a strange place, as we'll see. One thing doesn't lead to the next. So we'll have to ask ourselves in a few weeks from now what was behind the editing of the text of Jericho, the text of Joshua. But before that, just one catch-up thing for last week. And as I want to share with you a map, I had said to you last week that the commentary I was using, Sojin, which I've had for years, and I appreciate him. He's an Italian biblical scholar, and I think the commentary was probably written in the 80s. I appreciate him very much, but kind of specific and narrow in his approach. I was able, in the meantime, to get a newer commentary from the Anchor Bible series, which some of them are from the 60s, but many of them keep coming out. And this one is from Thomas Dozeman, and I'll be using a lot in this. It's extremely comprehensive, which takes a little bit more time to wade through what I'm interested in for our context, and what else is out there, because it really is up to date, and I appreciate his scholarship. Don't know where he's from, haven't had time even to. Unfortunately, I spent yesterday out of commission totally. I got 3 vaccines on Monday noontime, and they put me out of whack totally, having 3 at one time, which probably means I should be careful not to do it in the future. But in any case, wasn't able to do all the research on, including who Dozeman is, this scholar. But I do want to share with you a map, because I said the other guy didn't have maps, and here's a map from. Okay, how do I make this? We got so many things going on. This. No, all right. Is this help at all, or is it, I'm kind of limited here in what I can do? I'm not sure really. Let's do this. Okay. All right. Yes, you can see it, I hope. Okay. Yes. Remember the boundaries of the promised land? This is his rendition of what we read. Just so you see it, right? Israel today is here. Dead Sea, Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret, Gaza Strip, apropos, would be around here. Syria here, Golan Heights, everything to the right of here is Jordan, Yemen down here. So this whole swath of which includes Lebanon, Syria, the Kingdom of Jordan, and parts of Iraq. It's a big piece, right? Did that ever? So Malka had mentioned, I think last week. Well, that's how it was under Solomon and David. I don't know. I don't think we have. I'm not an expert. I don't think we have evidence the fact that it was ever like this. But this is in the mythology. This is in the ethnic conscience, the national conscience of who we are, and it has a lot to do with where we are today politically in the state of Israel. If you have this knowledge, quote, knowledge of what the land of Israel is, and you are living in the land of Israel, and you believe in a fundamentalist way that what's written in Scripture, whether it's in Deuteronomy or in Joshua or in other places, is binding or give us a right to, those are two different things, but they're similar, then you do certain things in your life and where you live and how you treat the other. And I'm going to leave it at that for now, but it's a terribly complicated thing. It's not just one nation moving into another nation's land. It's not as simple as that. We all know that. And it's not just for refuge, as far as the Zionist project is concerned. It's not just to create a center of Jewish culture, as Hada'am wrote and pressed all the wonderful, important things about the state of Israel. If you have this in the background, then it's about the implementation of the promise, the covenant that God made with the people of Israel from Abraham, as we had in last week's Torah portion, to this very all the way through Joshua and those that came back from Babylonia and the exile and whatever it might be. Okay. All right then. Let's get to our text today. Unless there are other comments. Okay then. Oh, another example of, if only we were doing this in Hebrew, I'd be able to show the wonderful style, the literary devices that the author is using here with Hebrew words. I'm going to try to bring up some of those things. One thing is in bold, it seemed to me different. There's a lot of locations, physical locations that are mentioned in the way this story is told, which I think want us to focus into. This is kind of my idea, and you see that in the commentaries. Focus on the physical aspect of this, not just the machinations of what's going on, but also there's a physicality here, which is important because the Israelites are supposed to conquer the land. And the way it's set up here, what's implied in this story, is that they've got to go through Jericho to get to the rest of the land. Now, whether that is true historically, whether that is even makes that much sense, whether it's historical or not from a geographical point of view, that's really up in the air. But the way it's presented here is, you want to get to the rest of the land of Israel, you got to go through Jericho. And if you're already going to Jericho, I'm already going to give you a little bit of, then let's have the reader think of other things as well, right? Like any good story, multiple meanings. So let's begin, Sue Spicer, because it is your anniversary. And how many years are you married? Unmute for us, please.
Sorry, 62.
62. Okay, 62. I can't think of a good gematria right away, but I'm sure I'll come up with something with some time. Okay. 62. Go ahead with the first verse.
Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 men from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go, reconnoiter the region of Jericho." So they set out, and they came to the house of a certain prostitute named Rahab and lodged there.
Okay. So, yeah, did you want to say something, Magdalena?
No, I was saying good morning to my aunt.
Oh, okay. Does she want to join? We'll say good morning to her as well. We all say good morning. And we appreciate your kalaniot, it looks like they're poppies, red poppies behind you. Okay, whatever they might be. They're not kalaniot, they're not poppies. Poppies are pragim. Anyway, both land of Israel flowers. Okay, so what Sue, you want to give your first about what's your favorite part of this verse?
The favorite part, okay. I guess the house of a certain prostitute named Rahab.
You like the fact that they right to the story. No, but you know what? When you're looking to be anonymous because they were sent secretly, where's a good place to go? You go to the brothel.
Right.
Right.
Everybody's there, so you know.
Well, in this case, it's one prostitute, so it's actually not a brothel, right? I think a brothel is multiple. I wouldn't know. I'm not a great expert, but Richard, you probably know.
I don't know either, but I certainly like my favorite part of it is that where they came from, Shittim.
Shittim, right? So let's go back. They came from a place called Shittim, which is Shittim means acacia trees. I think we have acacia trees out here in California as well, but all through that is the acacia tree, as Ella will remember, she'll remember it. Atzezesim omdim. Atzezesim, atzezetim, omdim, atze. You remember that, Ella? Atzezetim, omdim, da 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 da.
No, it's Atzezetim omdim, I think.
Right, but many people used to sing atzezetim omdim, that olive trees were standing. But the truth is, the verse is atzeshitim omdim, atzeshitim. I don't remember what the whole context of that song was, but it's out of a da, da. You can imagine the video with the women in Tahiti and whatever it is. I don't know. Or bossa nova, whatever kind of music that is, right? Something I obviously don't know about. That the shittim were the trees that all of the tabernacle was constructed from. That was the wood that they used, because that's the wood that's out there in the wilderness. It's not thick wood, but I guess if you find an old enough tree and you chop it in a certain way, then we got some. Oh, you're going to the screen share. Thank you. So there's a lot of different kinds, many kinds that. Some of them are more. The foliage is more green and thick than others. If you look at the bottom of what Madeline has put up, there's a little the one with the yellow blossoms right there is good. Leave it there. The yellow blossoms. Okay, there you go. We used to call it a bamba tree. Maybe some of you know the snack, the bamba, the peanut snack, which is so ubiquitous in Israel, and the reason why apparently Israeli children are far less peanut allergies than us, because they're fed peanuts from the very beginning. We had these; they were surrounding the Moshav and the Gaza Strip. This kind was not indigenous to that particular land. We can close down the screen now, thanks. But they were planted by the JNF in many places to hold dunes. It's a good plant to keep the dunes from spreading. And so the one that's there, that's a flower of. I don't, each one has a little bit different things, but it's a large family of trees. We don't know necessarily of this place Shittim in where it would be today, but it's on the other side. Okay, so it's on the other side of the Jordan River. That's where they are. Joshua sends them secretly, not publicly. And the word that's used here is the first word of the Hebrew here on the page, Vayishlach. And if anybody is a Torah, well, Dan, does it remind you of any story? If you could unmute.
Maybe when Moses sent Joshua and Caleb.
Exactly. We're meant to think here. The author, this is a mirror or a bubble of that particular story. Joshua is doing what Moses did. Moses did with Joshua, and when Moses sent, there were 12 spies, right, to reconnoiter the land. That was done in a public fashion. wasn't done in secret, it was done publicly. And when they came back, of course, you remember the story in Numbers, 10 of them brought back a negative review so that the people of Israel would lose hope, or they did lose hope and decided we're never going to win this war. And then 2 came back with the truth, the way the story is told. Joshua was one of them, Caleb ben Yefuneh was the other. And then that turned out to be the reason in that particular tradition, the punishment why the Israelites had to wander around for 40 years in the wilderness, because they weren't ready. They accepted the negative view that they wouldn't be able to win land. And still, right after that story, is some of them said, no, we'll do it. Okay, we'll do it. We'll go up, and they were slaughtered. Right? They were totally smashed in battle. So we're meant to think of these things here when we read this story. So that's the first part of it. Go ahead.
I have okay, just a point of information. There's a kibbutz in Israel in the Jezreel Valley called Bet HaShita. That's but the other thing that I wanted to mention is it's in some commentaries. They say that Zonah was not a prostitute, but she was an innkeeper.
Right. We're going to get to that. Ella, we're going to hold that because I brought some sources on the other side in which we're going to get to that particular. I want to go through the story, and then we'll go to that particularly, because it comes from the fact, and this is why I think Susie, her eyes were drawn to that part of the passage. Was, really? You're talking about the heroes of Israel and they went to a prostitute's house? Is that really? So in one way, people like say, yes, well, that's, you know what, we're going to leave that. That'll be the last part. Last 10 minutes we do today will be the 3-4 sources, whatever I brought at the end of the page to talk about them. But that's certainly up in the air. It gets our attention in any case, right? And her name, anybody know what the Rahav's name means?
Rahav. Wide?
To ride.
Insinuating. Okay, so I'll leave it. This is a woman who spreads her legs. I'm sorry to say, but that seems to be in the background of her name. And Rahav has a glorious history, positive history in rabbinic literature. We'll see a little bit of it later on. But for now, this is the kind of story. This is a short story that uses these literary devices to capture the attention of the reader or the listener, or perhaps originally, and starts us off on this story. It's not a war; it's a precursor to war, perhaps. But you've got these two, and it's also, I would say, by introducing the story this way, it's a tikkun. It's a correction, an adjustment of what happened in the past, a corrective story. There must be a better term for it, but it's a corrective for that story that turned out so poorly for the Israelites in the book of Numbers about the 12 spies. Okay. All right, Malka, you want to read the next one?
Let's see. Just going to unmute. The king of Jericho was told, some men have come here tonight, Israelites, to spy out the country. The king of Jericho thereupon sent orders to Rahav, produce the men who came to you and entered your house, for they have come to spy out the whole country.
So he sent them quietly, but still it becomes known, right? We don't know how it got known. It doesn't really matter. The cat is out of the bag, and which creates the suspense in the story. In the background here, though, in the first part we read, and in this read as well, something else is going on. I would call it the subconscious of the story. When you read it in Hebrew, you see the words vayahu, vayavo in the first verse, and they came to her, right? To a zonah, to a prostitute. And then in the next verse we have Hine anashim bao, these men, they came to you. V'yishlach, I'm sorry. And at the end of the first verse, vayishkavu sham, and it says here they lodged there. But bo, shachav, yada, all those words are euphemisms for sexual intimacy, sexual action. And that is, and I would totally agree with those who have said, and this I saw already in my studies with Zakovich as well. This sets kind of a sub meaning, a subconscious. There's a sexual air here. She is a prostitute. They came, yes, you could, came means in many cases, but when you take that together with they came to her and they slept there or they lay there, and later on there's going to be no as well, it's in the background. There's something, it's had potential for something to be very sexual there. And that's what the reader wants us to think, oh, is something going to happen? It's similar to, if you remember the scene in Ruth, Megillat Ruth, where Nomi says to Ruth, go down to the threshing floor. Boaz is sleeping there tonight. And she goes down and he sleeps, and then he feels her in the middle of the night at his feet, feet being a euphemism for the male sexual organ. She's lying there. The words are there. The opportunity is there in the text. They're alone at night. They could hook up, if I can use a younger person's word, they could hook up if they wanted to. Probably nobody would have known. And yet, as Zakovich understands there, they don't. That's the whole point, is they could have, but they didn't because they're tzaddikim, because they're righteous people. And they wait until it goes through the proper channels. So that's kind of what I think what's going on there. It's possible for this to happen. And in the meantime, we're waiting. Well, they're there. They're soldiers. They're, are they going to, as long as they're in the prostitute's house, should they not go ahead and hook up, so to speak? Okay. Anybody else on this before we go on? Okay, Rita Claire, 4-7.
The woman, however, had taken the 2 men and hidden them. It is true, she said, the men did come to me, but I didn't know where they were from. And at dark, when the gate was about to be closed, the men left, and I don't know where the men went. Quick, go after them, for you can overtake them. Now she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under some stalks of flax that she had lying on the roof. So the men pursued them in the direction of the Jordan down to the fords, and no sooner had the pursuers gone out than the gate was shut behind them.
So we're, again, geographically brought to different spaces, different things, doors opening, doors closing, gates opening, gates closing. Yes, they did come to me, but they didn't, I think the reader is encouraged to think they came to me, but that's only physically. I put them up on the roof. Anything else you could remember has happened on the roof in biblical narratives?
David and Bathsheba.
Exactly. And one more story, less known, but a reaction to the David and Bathsheba story. It's Avshalom. Avshalom rebels against his father with his father's concubines on the roof so that everybody can see. And I'd like to think, at least that's in the background here as well. The roof is a place where those things happen, yet here it doesn't. My whole point is it would have been natural, but it didn't happen. Right? These 2 guys doing what they're supposed to do, and they'll come back with a report, whatever they come back with, but they're the quintessential 2 good guy spies, as opposed to the bad name that spies got because the story in Numbers. I know it feels perhaps we're reading too much into this. This is my training through Zakovich, and I think, but I see that a lot of that is here in Dozman as well. And I need to check and see. He has quoted Zakovich in when I get a book, I always go to the references, the bibliography, to see if my teachers were mentioned, right? I don't see if I'm mentioned because I didn't write anything, so I can't do that. But I do see I like to see who their influences were and what they've taken into consideration. A lot of it for me has to do with, I take a scholar far more seriously if I see works in Hebrew in their bibliography. Because so much is written that is not translated. In fact, Zakovich himself, I don't know if he still abides by it, but for many years, he would publish an article in Hebrew and he would not publish the article in English. I guess maybe when he got married to Valerie, maybe some things were translated. But when I was working with him in the late 80s, he would not publish an article in one language, in another language. He said, no, I published it. If they want to, they can read it. And he has, one of his early articles is called Tod Sisra, the death of Sisra. that whole story in Judges that we did years ago when we looked at the book of Judges, where Yael slams a tent stake into Sisera, the general's head, and he wrote it in German. I said, well, what's this? Yair, what? He says, I studied German. I wanted to see if I could write an article in German. So that's why I only wrote it to see if I could write an article. And that article did not appear in English or in Hebrew in another place, at least at the time. I'm not up to date on his bibliography. But and so Zakovich is mentioned here, and it could be just that there's more and more of that kind of that kind of reading now that there was in the older commentaries that didn't accept that kind of meta view of the Bible, the intertextuality, as much as it was. It was more of it was newer when I was a student at Hebrew University, and maybe it's more accepted now. Malka, please chime in if you have any examples of your own or any input.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, when you said that he wrote the article in German, most biblical scholars, I know I had to read German and read French. And because at JTS you had to know Hebrew, so he was accessible.
Right. Yeah, I had to study German as well, although I remember one miluim, a reserve duty I did on the top of a mountain overlooking the Dead Sea. And I forgot, and it took me the whole 3 weeks to translate an article. With my
now you just put it in Google and it translates it.
Yeah. Okay. So any other comments? Yes, Rita Claire.
Okay, she could have believed the men who came and told her that they were spies. Why did she not believe them? Why did she believe the men who came to her and hid them?
Oh, no. She misled them. She's
I
helping
know she misled them, but my question is, why didn't she believe that the authorities came and told her these were spies? Where are they? But she knew that what made her know that they were not spies?
Yeah, that's okay. So it's assumed in the text is not said specifically. We don't know. That's the telegraphic nature of this folktale, because they want to focus on what is important. That, to me, that would support, why do we need all those words about sexuality or the different places, the geographics of it? I would say because that's the focus of the author of the story. It doesn't really matter how they knew. It doesn't matter, how did they know that she was a prostitute to go to her house? How did they? But what's clear from the beginning is that she sides with them, and some of that is tendencies in folkloristic literature in general for outsiders to stay together, right? She's the other. Prostitute is an ultimate other of society, and so these two others come to land, so she sides with them. And the midrash is, in many ways, the midrash comes to fill in those gaps, Rita Claire, that you pointed out exactly right now. How could she know? And so midrash comes to say, well, because she was really a righteous woman. But we'll hold on and we'll talk more about Rachav at the end. Good question. Yes, Ella.
Now, could they have bribed her?
We don't know. It doesn't say. It doesn't sound like it, right? It doesn't say. If there's no reason, I think we probably would assume that it was altruistic. She was doing the right thing.
But isn't that kind of a code of prostitutes? Not to say who came, who went to them, and who was there, and they keep it secret. That's kind of like their code.
Yeah, fair. I hadn't thought of that at all. Very much so. The discretion. Mm-hmm. which sets up why that's kind of the whole story works because of that discretion. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Great. Okay. Madalena, 8 to 13.
The spies had not yet gone to sleep when she came up to them on the roof. She said to the man, "I know that God has given the country to you, because dread of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land are quaking before you. For we have heard how God dried up the waters of the Sea of Reeds for you when you left Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings across the Jordan, whom you doomed. When we heard about it, we lost heart, and no one had any more spirit left because of you, for the eternal, your God, is the only God in heaven above and on earth below. Now, since I have shown loyalty to you, swear to me by God that you in turn will show loyalty to my family. Provide me with a reliable sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and save us from death.
History lesson. So this kind of explains a little bit as to why she sided with them, because it's inferred here that she knows her history. She knows political global events. She knows what's going on. And we get this from time to time. What I love most about the history lesson is that you so often find two characters mentioned. And who are those two characters? Sasha says Sichon v'Og. All right, Og and Sichon. My Og being my favorite. Sichon is also one of my favorites, but Og being one of my favorite characters in biblical literature. So all over the place, just so really mentioned in Joshua. In the book of Joshua, there's a number of mentions of Og. Maybe it's always Sichon and Og. It could be both of them. I don't remember, but certainly Og. I had the greatest pleasure in giving a sermon this last Shabbat. Some of you were on the Zoom, I think, at Kilat Marav in Santa Monica. There was a gentleman off to my right who, whatever it was, when it talked about, the text talked about how the Palit, the refugee or the escaped ones from the war of the 4 and the 5 kings up in the north, came and told Avram that Lot had been taken captive. And so, who was that refugee from the war? And according to Midrash, it's Og HaMelech. And this guy knew it. I said, who is that? And this guy said, "No." I said, do you remember how he was a refugee? And he said, well, because he's one of the ancient ones and he survives. And he caught a ride on the ark with Noah. And then I told him about the Muslim in some of the Islamic traditions where it's a parallel to that, is he was so tall the water only came up to his knees, and so on and so forth. So Og in biblical literature already is just really all over the place. In the book of Psalms, in Numbers, in Deuteronomy, here in Joshua, really a mythological character in so many ways. And so here they start, he and Sichon, they're prominent in this little history lesson that she, the prostitute, gives the two guys. He said, why are you helping us? This is why. Okay. Hold on, go ahead.
I was wondering if Rachav is a prophetess.
So Sasha wants to know if Rachav is considered to be a Neviah, a prophetess. And we'll get to a little bit of that at the end. There is a tradition. There is a tradition. What? Yeah, there is a tradition in Midrash that she's one of the female prophets. By the way, Sasha and I, we were on a Zoom call this morning. I look over the My Jewish Learnings hub activities. Some of you, I think, have gotten to us through them. And lo and behold, the other day I see Rabbi Debbie Shua Chaim, who is our daughter, is on a panel about Lilith, together with an artist and the publisher of Lilith or the original editor of Lilith magazine. I think once we get the link, I think that we'll put it out for if you'd like to see it. It's fascinating. We had serious amounts of nachas. Sasha and I watching our daughter hold her own on a panel with about over 200 people watching. It was really, really quite wonderful. So, and why did I say that now? I said that because she talked about the redemption of Lilith as a character into a positive feminist character, and how we utilize, and that's what the Midrash did with Rachav. Rachav, she's a prostitute here, and yes, she helps our folks out, but she becomes something much greater in the Midrash, written by men, by the way. All right. She's talking about God, Adonai, right? She knows her stuff. She knows her theology. She knows her sacred history. Should we go on?
Yes.
Okay. Gary, do you want to read?
I don't have the sheet.
Okay, all right. So let's go on. Richard, 14, please.
14. The men answered her, "Our lives are pledged for yours, even to death. If you do not disclose this mission of ours, we will show you true loyalty when God gives us the land."
Right now, some people have said that this is an etiological story as to why there is a tribe or a family of Rachabites amongst the people at a later date. This is the origin story, how they got. So this is the beginning of that story right now. Now there's a bit of a negotiation to go on right now. Richard, why don't you go ahead and read the next section?
She let them down by a rope through the window, for her dwelling was on the outer side of the city wall, and she lived in the actual wall. She said to them, "Make for the hills so that the pursuers may not come upon you. Stay there in hiding 3 days until the pursuers return, then go on your way."
Right. So while some biblical scholars would say this is a doublet or this is an alternate tradition, I would go ahead with the way this imparts that the wall was that thick. This is what I hold by this interpretation. The wall was that thick as there was room for her house in the outer side of it, as opposed to the inner side of the wall. And not that she had the one tradition said her house was on the outside of the wall, which might make sense. You put the prostitutes outside of the wall, and that's and then the second part was added, and she lived in the actual wall. To say, that was added later. To my mind, I would keep them both as original, and it just shows just how wide the wall was. And we need to know the knowledge about how wide the wall was for what's going to come up in a few chapters, the conquest of Jericho itself, which is not, you think it would be the next chapter, it's not. Okay. And then let's go on to 12:21. Let's see, Ella?
Well, no, 17:21.
All right, 17:21, yeah.
Okay, but the men warned her, "We will be released from this oath that you have made to take, unless, when we invade the country, you tie this length of crimson cord on the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your family together in your house. And if anyone ventures outside the doors of your house, their blood will be on their head. And we shall clear out or clean out if a hand is laid on anyone who remains in the house with you. Their blood shall be on our heads. But if you disclose this mission of ours, we shall likewise be released from the oath that you made us take." She replied, "Let it be as you say." She sent them on their way, and they left, and she tied the crimson cord to the window. Should I continue?
No. So somebody may ask why a crimson cord? I don't know. I'm sure a lot's been written on it. To me, it's less of a issue other than it sticks out. A crimson cord, the brightest thing, like if you want something in red sticks out, seems to be from other colors, and it's one of those colors that you in the ancient variety of colors which are limited, which you can make and do.
It reminds me of the Passover.
It reminds me of the Passover being the red. I hadn't thought of that, the blood on the doorpost kind of thing. Yeah.
I thought of that crimson was related to being a zonut. And I was just thinking about the book and the Scarlet Letter. That when you had to wear the Scarlet Letter, you were like, when women had to wear it in ancient New England, that they were seen to be prostitutes. I thought red was associated with prostitution. So I know there's a Akkadian story where the Zonah's wearing red too. So I was just thinking maybe that's
so that's a huge stretch of time. So I get I don't know if the Scarlet Letter, if this is where it comes from a Christian culture point of view, if that's where it's known. I just don't know, and I don't know much. I don't know anything about it, but Yeah, I guess so.
It's an Akkadian story. I can't remember. I'll send you the reference for it where Zona's wearing red.
Okay, we can bring it for all of us next week.
I will.
Thank you. And Dan, your point is? What's the connection? What would be the connection?
The connection is that it's a sign to omit that house from the destruction.
Protection. Good. Very good. Yeah. So the deal back and forth is, you know, the interesting thing, of course, is she has a household, right? Does a household mean that she does have a brothel? Or household mean that she happens to be a prostitute, but she also has children at home who she's working to feed? It doesn't mean so much, but it's kind of like it's a little bit like Lot and his family who are fleeing from Sodom and Amorah and told not to turn around. And that's why Lot's wife turns into a pillar of salt. There seems to be some going back. I'd have to check and see if the word, there may be a fair amount of wordplay between that story and here. That's where my mind would go with this as well. Other stories of being saved from destruction. And then they say, but if you're not careful, your people aren't careful, then it doesn't. In other words, she has to stay inside of the wall to be protected, which means that she's got to rely on what she herself brought as a history lesson, that we know God will save you. So you believe that? Then you stay in the wall even when the Israelites are attacking, and God will save you. So they're demanding from her the faith that she purported to, you know, to have herself when she said, "Why I saved you." Okay. Any other comments?
Is there any kind of connection between the red rope that she was going to use as a sign and the red band that they put on an arm of a kid, or for Brian Hara?
Yeah, I don't know. I see that red band that used to find the woman at the Kotel would put on people, give her a contribution. Then I see that it's everywhere now, and all people, hipsters to come into the coffee house at Gray. I see it on a lot of people from LA. It's a common thing. So I don't know if it stems from. The truth is, I don't know. I never looked it up, but I would imagine it's become a universal kind of a talisman or amulet kind of a thing. And is that connected to this? Perhaps, I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that the person, you know, at the coffee house from LA who's in buying used records from Kelly and Jim knows the story from Judges, but perhaps I'll ask them. Okay. All right. David Freeman, you want to read?
Just a second, Rabbi. What verses are we at?
It's the last, it's from 22. It's not labeled, but it's the last section from Judges on the second page, second paragraph on the second page.
All right, give me just a second to get the, I did say download the worksheet. Just a second here. Here, double tasking. Oh, I did not download.
Okay.
Just...
All right. If you get it, you let me know. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, it didn't.
That's all right.
Download.
That's all right. Right. Sid, you want to read that section? They went straight
to the hills and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers turned back. And so the pursuers searched all along the road, did not find them. Then the two men came down again from the hills and crossed over. They came to Joshua, son of Nun, and reported to him all that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, God has delivered the whole land into our power. In fact, all the inhabitants of the land are quaking before us.
Right. Yeah. Pretty self-confident.
Very.
Right. Pretty self-confident. And based on this one little story, it's an exemplar of what's going to happen kind of a thing, which explains to us why it's here in the editing, at least for now, why we have this story before the actual going across the Jordan has happened. right? This is kind of, it's almost as if the story is an omen, not omen, the story is an omen for the Israelites, again, according reading the story the way we do, and assuming that this is, the story being told with the Israelites in mind, their psyche as well. This is an omen that things are going to be all right. Now, I put the word quaking before us, which we want to check when we get to the chapter about the destruction of Jericho, which I didn't go ahead and do. But namogu, I don't think it's the same word, but perhaps there's also some foreshadowing there of what's going to happen to the walls of Jericho, which Sid doesn't know because Sid never reads ahead. So Sid doesn't know that's going to happen.
No, I never read ahead.
I know, yeah. Okay. All right, then. So before we get to some of the post-biblical writings and get to Ella's question, a little bit to Rita Claire as well, any comments just about this short story itself? Okay, Dan, why don't you read from Masechet Zvachim?
We might also ask the question of why Scripture first states they had no more spirit left in them from later chapter, and then afterwards states no man was able to stand anymore with spirit from an earlier
so the
chapter.
Before and after, don't get caught up with the before and after.
Okay.
It's the way he builds the midrash, right?
Here and there.
Yeah, exactly.
Rechav implied that they even lost their virility. How does she know this? Mar says, there wasn't a prince or king who didn't come to Rechav the prostitute. They said Rechav was 10 years old when Israel left Egypt, and she whored herself for 40 years while the Israelites wandered the wilderness. At the age of 50, she converted and said, may I make repentance by the merit of the cord, the window, and the flax.
Okay, this is the shorter. There's a lot of long drawn out traditions, but this is the short version, right? She's a chozeret b'tshuva. She's a gerat tzedek. She's and all this, and there's others, of course, but this comes up from Midrash from one time to another. When you have a character who lends themselves to this converting to Judaism, is brought up. The most common one would be Ruth, the Moabite. Another one would be Jethro, Kohen Midian. Another one would be Melchizedek in a different way, not the simple meaning in the text, of course, who comes to light in last week's Torah portion after Lot is saved by Avram. Yeah. So, any comments or questions about this passage? Okay, why don't you read another one? Now we're jumping ahead. Although Rosh, yes, Sid.
Where does this say that she converted and wanted to make repentance?
In the Babylonian Talmud.
Oh, but it's not
Midrash.
in the original.
Right. To me, I know you said because some people may remember this is a haftarah. This section here is the haftarah for the Meraglim, for Shlach Lecha, I think. I'm pretty sure that is. I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure this. What? Yeah, it's the haftarah for Shlach Lecha, the story of the Meraglim. So Sid knows that haftarah. He says, I don't remember anything about this.
No.
Because it's not in Joshua. It's in the mind. It's in the midrashic minds, the creative, literarily creative minds of the rabbis in the Talmud. Dan, why don't you read the next one? We're jumping ahead now to.
I just didn't know if it was there or not.
Okay, so we're jumping ahead to Radak, Rabbi David Kimchi, who is after Rashi. Rashi already mentions this, but I like his commentary better. He spreads out his logic, and this is for you, Ella.
Okay. Zona, literal, or a seller of baked goods, like the Targum Yonatan has it, seller of baked goods, hundikita, and this is with a good weight.
All right, so let's take that apart.
Puzzled.
So Zona literally, this is not the greatest translation. I would have translated a little bit different. Zona mean seller of baked goods. Why they got the baked goods, I don't know, but a seller of mazon. Mazon is not just baked goods. Mazon is food. So mazon from the word zona, from the word mazon, a seller of words. And then it says, and that's like what we find in the Aramaic Targum, Yonatan, who has pundakita. Now, Pundakita is also not exactly a seller of baked goods. Pundakita is the inn mistress, the owner of the inn. A pundak is an inn still used in modern Hebrew, even though it's Aramaic taken from Greek, and Pundakita is the woman who runs the inn, as opposed to the inn where men go to have sex, the brothel. It's like in the westerns, right? They go up and they have a meal downstairs and hear the show, and then they go upstairs with the ladies. So that's the Pundakita. Go ahead.
And the true opinion of Yonatan.
A good way. This makes sense, is what he wants to say.
Isn't the pronunciation Pundakayit?
That's in Hebrew. Pundakita is in Greek and Aramaic. Pundakita in Hebrew became Pundakait. Go ahead.
And the true opinion of Yonatan was an actual zonah, since such was the way in places to translate zonah as a seller of baked goods. And so, two women who were prostitutes, zonot in Kings, is translated in the Targum Yonatan as sellers of baked good, pundekan.
Right, that's the story of Solomon and the sword and the decision to cut the baby in half, which of course makes no sense whatsoever. It makes sense because there's prostitutes, right? But this is the acrobatics that Radak is doing.
And this, even though a few of the translations are according to the opinion of Bara, and his opinion was that a zonah is like a seller of baked goods in that she sells herself to all.
Oh, a chochmalog, as we'd say, right? She's like, sorry. Okay. Which means it's the truth, right? If you sneeze after something, it means that's the truth. Okay. All right. And Malka, why don't you read us from Josephus, which is kind of a bridge between all these things. But if Radak is writing in the 13th, 14th century in Provence, Josephus, of course, is in the end of the 1st century, writing this for the Koine, the common Greek reading population of Rome. Go ahead.
Now those that met them took no notice of them when they saw them, and they supposed that they were only strangers who used to be very curious and observing everything in the city, and did not take them for enemies, but at even they retired to a certain inn that was near to the wall, whither they went to eat their supper. Which supper when they had done, and were considering how to get away, information was given to the king as he was at supper that there were some persons come from the Hebrews' camp to view the city as spies, and that they were in the inn kept by Rahab, and were very solicitous that they might not be discovered.
All right, so I brought this because in the inn is that same word pundak. Pundak. They were in the pundak, and already in Josephus's time, a pundak was a place of where you get a meal, is the way that he tells the story, because Josephus is always trying to make our guys look better than they were, is where you get a meal, but it's also understood that that's also where you can find a woman, a prostitute to have sex with. And so that's just a little bit of the background that Ella, that you were asking about. And then I guess what I didn't bring here, and I think because I wanted to limit it, were the other, and that's what I was referring to with your question, Rita Claire, is that, yeah, and what Sasha said, Rahav has a rich history of being a positive figure in the Midrash. And some of you may remember that the first chapter of the Gospel according to Matthew has a genealogical tree of where Jesus comes from, and only 5 women are mentioned out of the 14 or whatever. I forgot how many, or 28, how many generations are mentioned in that genealogy. And of those women, it's Tamar, Rachav, Bathsheba, Ruth, and Miriam. Those 5 women. And so Rachav is one of them, and she is thought to be the mother of Boaz, or the grandmother of Boaz, the mother or the grandmother of Boaz, I think. And so if you were to look up a Rachav in Midrash, you'll find a very rich library or selection of traditions that are positive. And that in itself is, I guess, again, it's men writing this literature, but it's a redeeming factor how someone can change their imprint on the world by certain actions. And in the Israelite/Jewish memory of this episode, she did so by saving those two spies. What did the spies see? Story doesn't tell us because it doesn't matter. How did they get in and out? Doesn't matter for this particular. The message here is that they were there, and there was a tikkun, a correction of the story of the spies and numbers. They came back, and because a woman who you would least expect it, the prostitute, the ultimate other, knows of God's protection of the people of Israel for 40 years, and because she knows this is a good omen going forward. That's what the author wants us to know from this story. Comments or questions? So actually nothing political today. Social, but not political. We'll get more on Jericho when we get to the actual conquest of Jericho. It's an interesting topic in itself, the history / and the archaeology. The story is a little bit reminiscent of another story that involves Jericho, and that is Ehud ben Gira, the assassin who's sent to kill Eglon, the fat king of Moab, and stabs him in the belly, if you remember, in Judges 3. And there too, there's this in and out. The geographical locations are important to the way the story is being told. He's in, you're stressed, and he's out, he's all right. There's this in and out here as well. Okay, Gordish, nothing?
There's one thing that struck me in the reading is the back and forth between the spies and Rechav. There's a contract negotiation. It's not all faith in God, and we know that you are the wave of the future. It's carefully hedged.
Yeah, and so that kind of that's because that's what reminds me of the story of Lot and Lot's family. It brings us to another story where there were specific directions that were not followed. And so I think the contract negotiation here is not for a better deal, right? It is for, it has a message. That's why I said, if you really believe this, then you stay in that room, where you stay in that house where you live, regardless of what's going on, the battle that's going on in the outside or the crushing of the walls. Right? You have to prove to us. Yeah. You think that they're not really, don't really have much bargaining power, but that's the way the story goes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so going forward, you should know that these are all recorded, and if you can't attend one of the lectures, and if you're doing something else that you're at and you can pay attention to, I don't want you to look at it on the screen, but you could listen while we're live streaming at the same time, and you can certainly go back. I think Madalena, when will an email go out with the video? What's the timing each week for this?
On Tuesday, so it would go out on Tuesday for the next class, but they can always go to the YouTube channel. By Friday, it should be up.
Okay, so so maybe you could make some note of that on Friday or something. I don't know how to do that, but so you don't have to wait until Tuesday. Or if you don't mind, if you can do it on Tuesday, you'll see there will always be on Tuesday. There'll be the text for the next day, but also the link to the recording of the preceding week. Okay, everybody, we'll be going next week and the week after, but then Sasha and I will be traveling to Israel as we had planned on the 21st, and I won't be teaching the time I'm away in Israel and France and Hungary, where I've got some things planned for a long time. So there will be that break then. But we've got the next 2 weeks coming up. I'm reminding everybody that we're in person this Friday night at the Methodist Church for our annual Interfaith Pride Kabbalat Shabbat. We hope to see you if you're able to be there in person. And we've got the other two classes coming up tomorrow. And on next Monday, we've added one more additional class to the series I've been doing in Jewish Collaborative of Orange County, which will profile the interfaith work that I've been doing here in the last 8 years in Palm Springs. Okay, any comments or questions?
Are you still doing the Thursday class?
Yeah, we do every Thursday morning at 9:30, at 10 o'clock, Isaiah, and the in-person class at 3:30 at St. Paul's. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Madalena. Bye-bye.